Thank you very much, Molly. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us today. We're really excited to have you all join us today. My name is Francis Odom. I'm the founder, CEO of the Software Analyst Cyber Research. We're a research and advisory firm focusing on key categories like SecOps, cloud security, identity security, as well as data and AI security. And so we're an independent research advisory firm, and we specialize primarily in researching, talking to practitioners about a lot of the evolving trends and solutions of the market. And so bringing my external perspective from the industry and speaking to thousands of practitioners out there, I'll be your moderator for today's conversation, where our goal today is really to talk about SentinelOne's Singularity platform vision, some of their new acquisitions that they just made, and then the broader story as to where their AI SIEM position is today. But to allow me to do that and to hear from the SentinelOne perspective, I'm glad to be joined by our two other lovely guests. So maybe I'll pass it over to Adriana to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Francis. Lovely to be here with all of you today. My name is Adriana Corona. I lead a product team here at SentinelOne for our AI SIEM platform. And that actually combines AI, our SIEM, our data platform, and the analyst experience team. I often describe that you might wonder, why are those functions actually one family within SentinelOne? And the truth is, it's because we have a shared mission. And our mission is for security practitioners to love their work. Now, we achieve that in many ways. And very often, especially recently, we use AI to solve the problems of security practitioners. And that really, this organization of our team and our shared mission is really what drives our roadmap and our vision for the future. So I'm very excited to talk to you all about that vision, as well as recent news about our acquisition of an excellent data platform, data pipeline, Observo AI. And with us, we also have Ricky, who is founder of Observo AI. If you'll introduce yourself, Ricky.
Thanks, Adriana and Francis. Super excited to be here, talk to everyone. I'm co-founder I was co-founder and COO at Observo AI, security data pipeline company, AI native. And now, as Adriana mentioned, with the recent acquisition, part of SentinelOne, and I'm head of product and GTM. So really excited to share insights, we learned from at Observo with, security data pipeline and the overall SIEM and SOC market, as well as, our new home, the amazing SentinelOne platform and how we fit in and, how that shapes our vision. So really excited to be here and talk to everyone.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. So fantastic. So again, our goal today in today's conversation is really to talk about where the future of SecOps and how AI and AI agents are changing the whole industry, and most especially how CISOs and practitioners could see a lot of value by incorporating AI into their SecOps today. So with that, just disclosure purposes, I think SentinelOne's a public company, and everything here is not for investment advice, and that there could be forward-looking statements here. And so just please feel free to look over the disclosures as well. So as a research firm with the Software Analyst Cyber Research, we're very fortunate to meet with lots of practitioners, and we see lots of different solutions out there on the market in terms of how different vendors on the market out there are helping to shape the future of SecOps. And uniquely, we did some research on Singularity with SentinelOne and spoke quite to a lot of practitioners within our network about the value that they were finding. And I think, to summarize and not to go over every tiny bit of detail on here, I think one of the key things we found with the Singularity platform is really just the unique advantages that SentinelOne starting up as a next-gen EDR company, and being able to leverage a lot of that same advantage of being this huge source of data. The EDRs, for any SecOps practitioners out there, they're very well familiar there. Your EDR telemetry data is probably your biggest source, or your endpoint data sources are probably the biggest source that you ingest within your SIEM, your teams have to spend time on, and eventually into your SIEM platform in of itself. And so no one had that advantage of standing up there. And over the years, they've expanded successfully to build out a robust AI SIEM capability, where at the heart of it, they've been able to leverage AI to drive a lot of automation-like capabilities, as well as contextualizing all of the unique data log sources they have from identity, email, network, and a lot of the unstructured data. And so when we spoke to many of the practitioners within our network, they really like the Singularity platform for a lot of the AI-based capability that was natively built into the product and being able to stitch a number of all of these components together into one cohesive platform. So that was our perspective. But maybe, Adriana, from you guys' perspective, what do you guys hear about from customers in terms of the value that they see with the Singularity platform?
Yeah, and I would say one of the first things is it's just saying the word platform. So it's popular sometimes to have a constellation of tools or maybe even a portfolio of products, but we have really emphasized creating an integrated, unified single platform. So we've invested a lot in the platformization of SentinelOne. And I will also mention that really the backbone and the foundation of our platform is the Singularity AI SIEM and the data lake. So we've built all of our features on that foundation. It's one of the fastest to query in the industry. And we hear that routinely from customers who query many large volumes of data, going from hours, 9 hours, to 20 minutes for the same type of query. So the first foundation was making sure the bones of the platform were strong, and that was our data lake and our query. Now, you'll also notice one really important thing. It's important to us, it's important to our customers, and in fact, it was also important to Observo, which made them very compelling. We don't believe in vendor lock-in. So even though we ingest many sources of data, security data, log data, we also have out-of-the-box security protection services, cloud security, endpoint, like you mentioned, identity, and more. We don't believe in locking you into only using our tools. So you could use our cloud security tools or use one that you already have, and our platform will still provide value to you. Those were the foundations. Now, we've also been on the journey of automating security operations, and that is where AI has been the core of that strategy. We launched Purple AI a few years ago. Around the same time, we also coined this autonomous security operations model and basically said to everyone how we plan to go from role-based to high autonomy in security operations. And that's a journey we've been on. We've been embedding AI into everything we do on our platform, with a focus really being on how do we make the daily life of a security practitioner better? Can we possibly even bring joy to the practitioner? And many times, and I think Ricky would agree with me here, that might mean do it for them, automate away some of the work. And that's really where we've seen a lot of synergies actually with the product vision that Observo presented and our vision of the future for security. And it really dovetails pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think even from our perspective, we hear this. The biggest, based off our research we've done with practitioners, is the alert fatigue, the cost of maintenance, and the high level of the analyst experience when a lot of these analyst teams are just chasing down a number of false positive and low-level triage cases. And I think for the very first time, we're really excited in the industry of what we have with LLMs and agents in terms of helping to automate and better improve that analyst experience, the SOC analyst experience around the triage and making things significantly faster. And at the end of the day, really what practitioners care about is the mean time to detect, the mean time to respond, and how quickly are we able to make that. And so I think this autonomous SOC maturity model makes a lot of sense based on what we're seeing, that today we're in partial autonomy, whereby, at least for the most part, we're seeing LLMs are able to do a significant part of the triage. Teams now are going from days and hours to minutes. And then I think in the near future, I really agree with the high autonomy case of like, we're going to have a situation whereby autonomous agents are actually significantly help automate a big part. Because I think in the near future, this is what we find as well, is the fact that humans are not going to be able to keep up with agent or AI-based attacks, right? AI-based, the level of attacks are going to significantly increase. And so having in humans, we're going to be significantly slow. I think one of the things we track today is dwell time, adversary dwell time, and that's still significantly low. I think probably in the low 60 to 50 minutes. And think about now, attackers are going to be using AI to perforate attacks, and so we're going to need agents, autonomous agents that are actually able to keep up with that pace of agents and no longer human. So I think we see huge opportunity in and around here. Maybe Ricky, I mean, I'll also be curious, obviously, with a data pipeline solution, you guys come in early into the process, right, coming at that data source. I'm curious how you guys also see the role of autonomy being played there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a security data pipeline, it's crucial for for the product and the platform to be autonomous. That's the vision we were kind of working on at Observo. And Francis, as you know, right, been working with a lot of different vendors, both on the source and data ingestion side, as well as the destination side, in terms of writing data to multiple SIEMs, data lakes, as well as observability platform, and that continues to be important for us, right? We, as Observo AI, as part of SentinelOne, we will continue to offer the independent data pipeline that is vendor agnostic, that can read from existing agents, that can read from existing collectors, whatever they might be, as well as write to destinations, legacy SIEM products like Splunk and others. So. As Adriana mentioned, that vision fits perfectly. Where SentinelOne is a big believer in being vendor agnostic, and so are we. And so that's why it makes complete sense for us to have SentinelOne as our new home, because of our ability to number one, be vendor agnostic. Number two, be still a standalone security data pipeline product, because as you're aware, talking to a lot of practitioners and enterprises, a lot of enterprises want to put in the data pipeline and then actually start making decisions, because the data pipeline helps you really get away from vendor lock-in and give you some flexibility in terms of your data layer and your detection layer. And so we continue to execute on that vision. We continue to make our AI much more smarter, in terms of being automatically, ingesting data, writing rules, writing regexes, et cetera, to make it easy for enterprises to ingest, normalize, stream and process that data, and then write to a destination. There's obviously, deep integrations with the SentinelOne platform that we have built, and we'd love to share that in more details as we go further in this webinar.
Absolutely. And I think we have lots of opportunities to do that. And, from our perspective, from our third-party perspective that we bring in, I think we see this as being a huge win for customers and SecOps leaders, quite frankly, of like, what if anyone has in our architectural work, we talk about how the SOC, the autonomous SOC, or even just the SOC in general, you could break it down into the data pipelines and the ingest. You have obviously your storage detection layer, and then you have your triage and response capabilities. And I do think if there was almost a gap missing within SentinelOne's original platform story, it was that ingest and normalization up there, and being able to leverage AI on there. And I do think that's where I see now, like, there's a complete story being told here, right? Now, Observer really comes in and says, hey, we're going to help you filter out what's most relevant. We're going to help you better normalization, help you to do a lot of your drift detection, and then leveraging AI agents to actually make that process significantly easier and faster. And then what you then have is a situation whereby the most relevant logs are going into your SIEM, and SentinelOne's AI SIEM is really great. We have a report in and around this. Maybe we'll just share this for attendees. You will find that report where we're going to be publishing that within the next week here for everyone. But we have that detection capability that uses AI to make those significantly faster and keep catching up to novel detections. And then most importantly, that response capabilities. Now we need to respond. We need to do a lot of investigations, we could actually use AI and the purple AI and a lot of the hyper automation capabilities that no one has always had. We see. So I think for any SecOps leader out there thinking about re-architecturing their SOC from left to right, I think the SentinelOne story really fits in well. I think this is maybe an architectural image. Maybe Adriana, you could maybe guide us through, and then we're also happy to share kind of how we see how we see the platform story.
I'd love to walk through this and to reinforce what you mentioned about how we kind of came at the problem from different angles. So at SentinelOne, we've been really focused on the security team's work. And I know this is something you do all the time, Francis, which is talking to customers. But even when we talk to customers, so our own security practitioners, our customer security practitioners, I know this looks kind of like cartoony, but this is based on actual data and interviews we ran with a lot of customers. And what we had discovered is basically the bad news is every part is hard. If you look at the ratings, so we had customers rate like, how easy is it? How satisfied are you? How happy are you? It's very rare to see anyone say that part of the job is easy. But you'll notice the hardest part of the job was always this threat hunting and investigation aspect. So we at SentinelOne, we deliberately, for the security practitioner, we started kind of on the right side. So when we look at this like convergence, we started on how can we automate investigation? How can we facilitate response? Because it was such a pain point when you look at the security downstream value. But of course, the other huge pain was actually wrangling the data and having a healthy data platform. So really this combination, this like union of Observo at SentinelOne was both visions being AI driven, automating away the hard work, but kind of converging in the middle. And that's where we arrive at our new architecture. So you notice we talked a little bit before about how our platform, like the bones of our platform are being able to provide a very strong data lake query and AI embedded on the full platform without being locked into any vendor. Observo now also provides that core functionality to be the data pipeline that actually facilitates really fast, at scale data ingest, vendor agnostic, and in a way that makes it easier for customers to actually get security value downstream. What we discovered was, even though our platform is very strong, the moment of ingest for data is so critical, because getting the schema or the parsing wrong in that moment actually means it's harder to get downstream security value. It's harder to run detections. It's harder to investigate. So having a really healthy and strong data pipeline that automatically does things like detect drift, that is actually the foundation of being able to provide downstream security value. And we found that in Observo. We also did a pretty detailed assessment where Observo came out on top. I hope we can talk about it. But I don't know, Ricky, if you wanted to add anything to our joint architecture now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Adriana, as you mentioned, right, good data is equal to better results, right? So being able to, and with AI, that's even more important. So, being able to, collect, ingest, normalize, parse all that data in an agile fashion, and then passing it on to, which is probably the best AI, AI-based SIEM platform today, Singularity. That's key, right? Because there are teams, a lot of security teams are not data wranglers; they're not data experts. So, giving them a tool in their toolbox so they can gather all this data, easily ingest it, easily parse it, and pass it on to the detection and the query layer is paramount, because that, number one, saves a lot of time that security teams or SOC teams would spend otherwise just wrangling with the data and not actually focused on security detections. But also the quality of data, given it's higher, given Observo can actually optimize that data and really keep, the high signal and the context and all of that, leads to much better results than you would usually find, right? Where the data, where you're essentially ingesting all the noise and all the stuff that does not matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to really build upon that as well, I mean, my firm, we actually have quite a lot of research on the security data pipeline ecosystem. I think we'll talk about that shortly in our next slide, but we've seen a lot of solutions, lots of vendors, but at the heart of my firm, really talking a lot about this ecosystem that Observer plays in was we saw a huge need whereby lots of, again, security teams spending lots of time, trying to ingest data, usually from on-prem sources in the cloud or at the edge. And it's extremely complex, especially when you're dealing with data. And the identity log is very different from what you might get from network IP addresses relative to maybe what you might get from your Windows Linux environment. And so we had lots, it's a very, very painful process moving that data and normalizing all of that within your SIEM. And so, because as I think Ricky talked about this earlier, you're only as good as the data you actually do receive. And so we saw this huge need. And obviously, I think that's even where we came across Observer and the team. And I think now, Singularity having Singularity AI SIEM or any customers on the SIEM or considering using Singularity AI SIEM capability, we'll see a huge benefit in making that ingestion process significantly easy. And not only that, not only do you have that benefit of making that easy, the triage and response even gets better. So maybe to our next part, I talked early on about the fact that we had actually looked at a lot of vendors on the ecosystem based off even our external research prior to this. And I think we weren't surprised when SentinelOne made the choice here to go with Observer. But maybe, Adriana, you could help our audience understand, like, what were the key things that really mattered. Obviously, there are lots of key criteria. It looks like SentinelOne really, really did the hard work to really go about finding the best platform out there, as opposed to, we know in the industry, M&As happening for different reasons, but it looks like there was a very clear analytical framework and thoughtful process applied before picking SentinelOne. So maybe it would be good to hear your perspectives, and I'll share later on what we even saw on Observer from our previous research as well.
Yeah, I'd love to share that because we spent many months actually during an evaluation process. Once we knew this is a problem we really needed to solve to make sure that we could have healthy data coming into the AI SIEM platform. So we started actually with a list of what are the must-have features, and then assessed over 20 data pipeline vendors. Now, some of them we ruled out because, functionality missing. We ended up with close to a dozen that we actually did actual POCs and deep evaluations with, and kept narrowing down that group based on how successful they were. So the first thing you'll notice is Observer AI by far in every dimension we tested was strong. So every dimension that was important to us, not only were they successful, so it wasn't just, a claim, a slide, a marketing website. It was, we tested the tool using our infrastructure, stress tested how it works, and succeeded. So they were successful in all of the tests, as you can see here. But that wasn't it. I would say the bigger takeaway for us was how far ahead they were compared to even our finalists. So by the end of many months of evaluation, it was we had it narrowed down to 3. And even in that space, and even comparing to like our maybe number 2, Observo, through all of our scoring was pretty far ahead. So it was clearly our favorite tool to use. One other thing I'll mention, I think I've said this maybe 2 or 3 times, but I really find it very important. Maybe because I used to be a security analyst, so I've felt the pain of like how hard it can be and how that impacts your day-to-day work. But for us, simplicity, ease of use, user experience, being able to set up, that was a really important criteria. So I'll give you an example. If you actually required many hours of support or documentation meeting to get your first pipeline up, that's a big deal, right? Because we already have security analysts day-to-day fighting fires, trying to defend their systems and their companies, and having them have to learn a totally new tool, not even understand how to use it. You can imagine the impact of ease of use. Now, and I'm sure as people get their hands on Observable AI, you'll agree with us. by far the easiest to use of all the data pipeline tools. And for many reasons, including how fast it was to onboard from zero, picking up the tool, get from I don't know what I'm doing to I have a healthy data pipeline so fast, creating new ones. And the other thing was also the out-of-the-box AI-powered features, including help with creating pipelines, but also there was this feature for health monitoring that even when we were testing was like such a help to be like, even things that other platforms might not consider an error, things like, hey, maybe the format of this property is wrong. It was those little details that actually end up saving so much time for an analyst. And it was just hands down the best experience and the most powerful, highest performing of all the tools that we tested. Now, a lot of praise, but I think that kind of explains why we went all in with Observo. And I'm sure, Ricky, you have the same experiences. Like you've been pouring so much of your effort into it. And I know, Francis, you said you also evaluated a lot of data pipeline tools. Hopefully this is a good reflection of what you found as well.
Yes, I think Ricky actually does remember that. In fact, I mean, and anyone could go see, we had a report much earlier this year. Actually, we had it in April 21st. We had the rise of, we called it the rise of security data pipeline capabilities. And we talked a number of key vendors. And obviously, we met a lot with Observer during that time as well. I mean, I feel like you could go over each of this, over and over all of these capabilities, but we'll probably just highlight two that really stood out for us. I think building upon what you had just said on the deployment simplicity, I think that was a very quick ROI that teams were wanting to see, that they could actually see very quickly. You're actually able to help us filter out our logs and getting us the most relevant data into our SIEMs. And I think that was one. But the two ones that really stood out for us, was just the OCSF passing capabilities. As the OCSF is a very popular standard for most SIEMs pretty much globally. And I think the ability for Observer being able to really support that in a very native way made that extremely easy. And because at the end of the day, your goal here is to reduce the heavy work associated with just ingesting diverse numbers of logs. And I do think for any customer who's thinking of someone's AI SIEM, that will be one of the capability that you will find with that. And that was one. Obviously, I think another key thing that we also liked too was obviously their ability to also support a number of the different deployment options, right? So some customers have data on-prem, some are using right, one of the other SIEMs on the market, or they have data sources at specific edge that they're actually deploying, getting data for more ingesting, having to ingest it and being able to process it there is increasingly crucial. And one thing that you guys probably didn't mention as much here that I do think we actually noticed about Observer was how much they really focused on embedding AI very early into their story, into making the whole process of ingestion and pipeline capabilities. They really emphasized that from the very get-go, on how much they wanted to embed AI, especially leveraging AI-powered parsers to make that process easy. So from our research, those were some of the things we had seen. We've actually written a lot in the past on Observer prior to any of this happening. So I think people could see that with all of what I'm just saying, we're not saying this now. It's actually, we've done this in the past. So yeah. And I think maybe one tiny piece, customers, this is maybe a little bit more thinking now about what does the win-win look like for Observer and SentinelOne. This is one thing we really found that would be helpful is just how much SentinelOne, so how much Observer.ai actually supports HEC, all right? In terms of, I think there's a very clean alignment here that will make data easy to move back and forth between both capabilities. But maybe Ricky, do you want to just share that? Obviously we all have our perspectives on this, and we know you have your own opinions on this, but when you guys would win against other competitors in deals, what were some of the key themes you guys consistently heard from customers for why you guys were winning?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to answer that. Just for a quick second, going back to the previous discussion. So, first off, I am a little flattered. Thanks for all the excellent words. And Francis, especially shout out to you. You've been covering the security data pipeline market pretty much when it started, right? So you saw that vision in terms of how important this is going to be in future, et cetera. And, on the other side of this evaluation, this is probably one of the most extensive technical evaluation slash POC I've been on. And it was important for us to, attach ourselves to a very forward looking, vendor that understands data, understands AI. And I'm glad, this worked out the way it did. Coming to your question, typically when we'll win is when enterprises saw how easy it is to build pipelines using AI and using our highly intuitive platform, right? That's number one, right? Being able to just easily build data pipelines without having to go, write code or without having to figure out all the rules and all the parsing and all of that, right? So that's number one, just ease of data pipeline creation, especially for all the standard stuff, right? Which security teams deal with a lot, firewall logs, EDR, endpoint logs, etc. So that was one. Number two was, being able to actually offer deeper optimizations. So, being able to recommend optimizations, because what we have done is we have built models. And as you mentioned earlier in the discussion, it's not one size fit all, right? What you do with firewall logs is going to be very different from what you do with application logs or, let's say AWS CloudTrail as an example. So we have models that we have trained with our synthetic data that actually offer recommendations out of the box and makes that whole process much easier in terms of creating those pipelines, offering deeper optimizations. And then it's not a static platform because we're going to learn from your data, right? So you get those pipelines and optimizations out of the box. It's going to learn from your data. It's going to get better over time. It's very dynamic, right? So we take everything. We basically derive a pattern space from all the log and event data as well as key value pairs, so we can start detecting any sort of drift from standard data, any sort of spikes, right? As an example, typically we see 10 GB every 5 minutes. We are seeing 400 GB every 5 minutes. What's going on, right? And those are dynamic because with the machine learning, we understand the seasonality. Oh, it's Black Friday. Okay, you know what? It's fine. This is what we are actually expecting. So a very dynamic platform, very AI driven to help enterprises quickly deliver value, right, by building those data pipelines. Deeper optimizations, using AI, et cetera. And then really being, the most extensive integration framework. So being able to integrate with pretty much anything. We have over 400 integrations, so far. That includes a variety of different sources, a variety of different destinations, very easy to utilize. And so, which includes APIs, hack, et cetera. So being able to offer that was probably the third reason, we would win a lot against competition, and our sales teams love that, right? Because we would win 9 out of 10 against all these vendors that are listed here because of those capabilities, because of quick time to value, because you don't need to spend a lot of time building out these data pipelines and data onboarding, etc.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. So maybe so amazing. Let's talk about now, like obviously, like the big picture. As we think about like why in general, like if we step back out now, why AI powered obviously pipelines will help any security leader win in today's SecOps ecosystem. I do think, as we've said, data is crucial, and obviously being able to optimize and route data easily is very much key. I think secondly, obviously, is the ability to adapt to changing data partners. And I think one thing to mention here is now we're seeing one thing we actually tracked in the data pipeline ecosystem. quite frankly, was the fact that data sources were just growing exponentially, right? Now, many companies have AI agents and they're gradually employing. This was like a log source that didn't have to worry. And in fact, if anything, with AI agents being deployed across enterprises today, that has a huge, like, people want to track and understand and get all of the log data associated. And now this is introducing a new log source as an example, right? And then your IP addresses, like there's so many of these log sources and the data volume. And so being able to very quickly adapt, I think AI again is going to be very crucial to helping organizations get better. And then obviously that continuous learning, that continuous adaptation is extremely crucial. I don't know if you have anything here to add, Adriana, to this section.
The only thing is reinforcing that we talked about the maturity levels for autonomy. The same is true for data pipelines. And so just as we're trying to automate investigations all up, we saw in the Observo roadmap this desire to fully automate data ingest, data normalization. I'm sure, Ricky, you can speak better to that, but understanding the opportunity available. And actually, we're starting to make progress across the board for all of the security functions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah, I was just gonna, add to what Adriana mentioned, right? In terms of the vision, in terms of the roadmap, the one thing we want to do is want to make it even more easier for folks to deliver these pipelines and deliver the value associated with it, right? So on our roadmap are things like being able to discover the data streams and build pipelines, automatically, through a recommendation system. It's not a black box. I don't believe black box in AI essentially works, especially in security. So being able to recommend those pipelines, but the overall vision is to make it even further easier and kind of that fully autonomous, as Adriana mentioned, and believe that's where the SOC platform and the SIEM are eventually going towards as well.
Great. One maybe final piece I'll just add to this again, just based off a lot of the external research we see, and uniquely in this case, why we think the Observer and SentinelOne, like I want to call it marriage or so, makes sense, is just primarily going back to a point I talked about, the shared language of HEC, right? And for many people who might be familiar with HEC, obviously, if you might know, it's an HTTP based, like it's a log ingest format popularized by Splunk within the industry, and we know it's a heavily used one. And I think one thing we knew about Observer is the fact that obviously they support HEC very closely, but also SentinelOne historically has also exposed an HEC compatible ingest. And so I think what now you have, and I'm sure this is what you guys will be working very closely, is being able to plug that together, both of what SentinelOne exposes to HTTP compatible ingest and what obviously how Observer supports that as well. I think what this is a win for customers is the fact that you don't need to have custom collectors anymore or translators between solutions. So it's very, very easy to pull data in and out, especially endpoint data, and you could easily stream it in, whether you're extracting data out of Splunk and putting it in, streaming that directly into SentinelOne. And so it's significantly faster. You could also faster, it allows for significantly faster forwarders in terms of moving data. And then obviously the passing and normalization becomes extremely easy. And so just wanted to maybe highlight that in terms of what that win-win is for them. So maybe let's talk about the financial ROIs now as a result. And I'm happy to talk through this. I do think a significant benefit, again, why we liked the pipeline was the cost savings that you actually had on your SIEM cost. Now, we know this is probably number one or number two biggest concern we hear from practitioners globally is the cost of ingest and maintaining, keeping up with their SIEM cost. And I do think this is going to help customers significantly drive down that cost profile. And yes, that number, 50%, is about what we have. and then also 40% reduction in incident resolution time. And I do think this is where AI has a huge advantage in terms of speeding up that investigation and triage processes. The other thing I will also say too is the ability, we've talked extensively about some of the filtering and filtering mechanisms that Observer brings. I think a key thing we heard about is being able to strip PII data. So I'll probably just build upon that for compliance and privacy reasons. And so you might be ingesting data from a specific source, but you want to make sure that this data is not being routed to this location, or before it's routed, we've already checked for PII-centric data and helping you keep compliance. So that's a major win we also see from this capability. Any other thing you would add to this, Adriana?
I'd say one other thing is just flexibility. So you gave PII as an example, but also supporting for other types of pattern matching, some PII out of the box or whatever you might be looking for, and preparing your data for security purposes. So by that, I mean, Observo has really powerful enrichment features at an event level, so at a log event level, which it's useful in its own, and it's useful for flexibility in routing, but also when you actually ingest it into a security platform, already having the properties in real time that you might use later down the road for detections or other way of enriching information for security purposes. The earlier you can do that in the process, the better, right? So there are strategies where you can maybe after ingest, enrich or make API calls, but if you can get that within your data stream, that actually sets you up to respond even faster. And we know that's what customers care about. So when you couple that, so you get more rich information without additional costs, right? In fact, you actually get a cost reduction. That I think is kind of the holy grail.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Amazing. So maybe the value of SentinelOne's Purple AI. So obviously we've talked a lot about the ingest capabilities and making that process significantly faster so that you're driving down cost on your actual SIEM and the storage retention cost. But as we also know, the triage is a huge pain point, a big challenge. And I think we're at an exciting time, quite frankly, in technology whereby we're seeing AI. And I think it's what's fascinating is I still remember from the SentinelOne IPO, right from the IPO where you guys were really very centric on AI before it really became what we know it. And Purple AI was always a key thing. And I do think you guys have invested in AI. It's been built from the core architecture up until now. And this is a lot of what even analysts, so other analyst firms like IDC, I think here have also recognized this as well, in terms of like the 60% reduction in likelihood of a major security incident. I think on our end, I think one thing we've heard that has been a big benefit of Purple AI is that faster to remediate security threats. And the key thing of how that becomes faster is the context, right? So SentinelOne as a company, again, you guys never started out as a SIEM, but you started off from the EDR, that telemetry, where it's a very rich source, right? Some of the work you guys, your threat research work that you have, and then obviously over the years, building on your data lake infrastructure, the cloud, the identity. And so when you have an embedded AI that's actually able to get context from all of those multiple sources, it speeds up that remediation. And I think that's how we get to a number like 55% faster time to remediate. And so these are some of the things we see and then that we think are key values of the Purple AI capability. So with that, we could wrap it up and maybe take questions and Q&A from our participants today. So I believe one of our first questions earlier on was around, could you give a simple example of how Observer helps? I do think we've spoken through a few examples, but Ricky, do you have maybe one primary example you feel like we haven't really hinted on that you believe customers might actually benefit from the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our sort of the bread and butter use case is being able to collect, ingest, optimize, enrich, data via the Observo AI data streaming pipeline, and then deliver that data to any data lake or any sort of SIM platform, right? That SIM platform could be anything, could be a legacy SIM platform, something like a Splunk, could be, an advanced platform, a next gen platform, something like SentinelOne AI SIM, right? But as I mentioned, we have 500 integrations, so we support a bunch of different sources, destinations, but at the core, that's one example, right? Really, that helps you decouple all of your detection and querying from all the data collection, data normalization, data parsing, optimization, etc.
Absolutely. Great. Maybe our next question here is around, it will be, I think the question here really gets to the heart of how should customers think about purchasing Observo either as an independent functional module or as part of the overall SentinelOne platform. So I don't know. I know this is still the early days. So I think there's still going to be a lot of figuring it out. But Adriana, do you have any early thoughts, let's just say, for how customers think about this?
I definitely do. And I think this is something we've been like very vocal and upfront about, that we completely plan to continue selling Observo as a data pipeline independently. And you probably read that in some of our announcements and blog posts. So I think the question was, is it going to be part of the platform as a module? Is it going to be something I buy separate and I can have a downstream SIM? Both. But we've talked about, we don't believe in vendor lock-in. Flexibility is our superpower. So I will say a lot of the Observo data pipeline functionalities can be built into our SIM platform. It's one of the core reasons why we're accelerating work there. But at the same time, we have many EDR customers who might already have a SIM or multiple SIMs, and they should also be able to benefit from Observo. We also know of customers who might be thinking of a SIM migration but haven't decided which is the right one for me. Again, obviously an excellent choice to have a kind of vendor agnostic data pipeline tool that helps you make that decision, really well-informed decision. And we support the other way around. So our AI SIM customers are going to be able to use Observo data pipelines to create new data pipelines, transform, enrich data, and all the advanced functionality as well. So I guess my overall answer is yes, both. And I don't know, Ricky, if you want to say anything more there.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll actually illustrate this with an example, right? Let's say I'm on this webinar, I'm an enterprise, I'm a security leader. We use Splunk today or one of the other legacy SIEMs, Exabeam, you name it, Microsoft Sentinel or others, right? And my challenge is I have too much data. I have a lot more data coming in. I'm not able to push all my data to the legacy SIEMs because of cost reasons, because, the data is overwhelming, because, I don't have resources who can effectively, onboard that data, or just takes too long. Number one. Number two, I also, or I'm looking for flexibility. I'm on legacy SIEM today, but at some point I want to start experimenting with the autonomous SIEMs or the autonomous SOC or the next generation platforms that leverage AI, right? So Observo is a great fit for that. You could be using any SIEM today. You don't have to be on any sort of SentinelOne platform today. You can use Observo to collect all the data and then, optimize the data and push that data to Splunk or any other system, that you might have. So that's kind of that independent aspect that Adriana mentioned. We'll continue to offer that to enterprises and our customers, who just want a data pipeline to solve challenges. So, that's kind of the first part. And the second part, as, Adriana mentioned, if you have AI SIEM, which is an amazing platform, you can use Observo to, onboard data and optimize data and all of that stuff.
Amazing. Great. There's a key question here, actually, I think we should answer is around, does Observo AI support Microsoft Sentinel? So do you maybe want to speak to your support for Sentinel?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Microsoft Sentinel is absolutely supported. We have plenty of customers who use Microsoft Sentinel as their SIEM platform. So we have deep integrations into that. We understand all the nuances in terms of, how do you take Microsoft Windows data and publish it into Microsoft Sentinel as an example. So absolutely supported, deep integrations, and we'd love to help you.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. Are there any other final questions from our attendees? We would love to answer your question. Obviously, a lot of these news it's still very much evolving, and obviously there's still a lot. But I think if there's any key takeaways we really want to leave with all of our listeners today is really just, I think, at least from an analyst perspective, from an independent analyst perspective, I think one of the benefits we see of this is the broader transformation of the SOC, right? And I do feel like it almost feels like no one now has the individual Lego pieces to help any security operations leader across their SOC, right? From the ingestion capabilities in terms of aggregating and ingesting multiple data sources to now a full robust SIEM capability built upon SentinelOne's data lake that they've had, which significantly reduces cost. And then all of the corporate AI and hyper automation capabilities to help with the triage and response. And so I think from an independent analyst perspective, we think it's a win-win story for a client thinking about how to rethink the entire SOC, all the way from, we call it shift left, all the way to moving upright or downstream. So with that, I don't know if there are any final thoughts, Adriana. Would love to leave our audience in terms of where they could find additional information and just more follow-up resources. One thing I will share is you will be able to find on the Software Analyst Cyber Research, we conducted in-depth research and analysis on SentinelOne's AI SIEM capabilities, as well as how Observer neatly fits into that story, as well as the triage as well, the full platform story of how we see SentinelOne playing a key role within SOC transformation. And so we have that report on the softwareanalyst.io or the Software Analyst Cyber Research Substack. You could find all of that information up there. But Adriana, anywhere readers or listeners or practitioners could do a follow-up.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for the time today. And we'll send some follow-up materials for anyone who's interested. Like we mentioned, this Observo acquisition is really important for SentinelOne. We're very interested in talking to you more about AI SIEM. And if you already have a SIEM and you need a healthier data pipeline tool, Observo, but take it from us who did a lot of research, and as well as from Francis, who also did research, Observo would be the right choice.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us and the SentinelOne team. I'm also at Francis Odom on LinkedIn, or you could send us an email and we would be happy to follow up on any additional questions. So thank you all and have a nice day.